I almost got into the conflict with these marvelous guys by moving the stand, so sorry for that. So my name is Paulius, and today I'll be talking about the cross-team collaboration. So, cross-team collaboration. Everyone needs it. Everyone really wants to make it right, but it's not always that easy. And today I'll be sharing a couple of stories from a perspective of an Agile coach. So I currently spend most of my days at one of the Lithuanian unicorns called Vinted, but the whole clarity and the crystallization on the topic of cross-team collaboration came up after working with multiple companies all across the world. So I think that the world is getting more and more complex. So we are experiencing different social, technological influences at a pace that was never seen before. So while it's getting easier to create a business, but actually sustaining a business and growing it, it's getting more complicated. And at this point, we have learned that if we want to create great things, we need multiple competencies, we need multiple skills, and we really need to bring people together to build something great. Regardless if it's landing a human in Mars, creating an autonomous car, or building some sort of a groundbreaking software. And the whole Agile ways of working movement has positively contributed to bringing people together. And that's stated in one of the Agile principles as well, right? So we want different people working together to achieve a greater good. But what does it actually mean to work together effectively, and how do we put that in practice? So let me give you an example. What does it take to create value in a modern technology company? So let's say you start with 6 software engineers. You have some front-enders, you have some back-enders, so that's a start, right? Then you add a product manager, engineering manager, a designer, someone from a data team like a decision scientist or a data engineer. And then, with some initiatives, you might need some input from user research, marketing, customer support, probably someone from legal, security and compliance, and many, many, many more. So basically, you have a lot of competencies that are needed to create value, right? So what do? You get all these 20 people together, and then you enjoy every stand-up where everyone has 40 seconds of screen time, right? So probably, in most of organizations, you don't build teams in this way. So you don't have these huge teams of like 20, 30 people or so. What do you do instead? Probably you have some sort of an ecosystem of teams that are collaborating together and trying to achieve business goals. And some of these teams are more specialized, and some others are more cross-functional. So basically, you have this ecosystem, and I bet most of you are working in organizations that are created in this way. But this ecosystem is not always pretty and not always easy. So when I work with multiple organizations, I hear probably the most popular quotes, which are, "We're blocked and waiting for that team. We cannot move forward." Then also, "What? Why they're even building this in the first place?" And then the last one, "So we're going to do all together." So when I say 1, 2, 3, we're going to read what's written in the last quote. So 1, 2, 3, "They broke our feature." Yes, that's the one. So it's not pretty. So one of the 100 ways how I help organizations and teams to improve their value delivery is basically helping to build relationship maps and co-creating them together with people. So what does that mean? So relationship map is basically a visual representation with what teams you're collaborating with and what sort of a connection do you have with them. So there are 4 types of connections that are defined by 2 factors. So the frequency of collaboration and then the direction. So for example, imagine you are a part of a product team and you're collaborating with another product team on daily basis. Probably you have some shared goals in common, so you're very close to each other. So in that case, the relationship between you and that team would be regular, bidirectional. To give another example, Imagine there's a team where you ask them to do something for you, maybe once a month or once a quarter. So for example, if you're launching a feature and you're asking for some translations, then the collaboration type could be occasional, one way. So basically, these are the 4 types that define what type of relationship you have with another group. So once you put these things together, you're getting the first version of your relationship map. So for example, here at the core, we have a product team, and then it shows with what teams we're interacting and what type of relationship do we have. So as you can see, one of the arrows has more emphasis. It's thicker, so that means it's a visual clue that with this particular team, the collaboration is more intense and more frequent. So what do you do next? You try to assess all the relationships that you have using a relative score, let's say relative scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the lowest score, 10 is the highest one. So basically, you share your perspective. It does not necessarily represent the reality because it's only your opinion, but it's a good starting point. So when you add this element, you start having a more completed version of your relationship map. So that's the first thing. That's the easy bit. The next thing is identifying which of those relationships you would like to improve. So basically saying that there are particular relationships that matter the most. So if the score is low, it does not necessarily mean that that relationship needs to be improved as a first thing. You need to make a decision as a team. Where do you invest the effort where it matters the most? So I'm going to give you an example and the way how I approach these situations. So imagine you decide improving the relationship between 2 groups. First thing you need to do, you need to get the buy-in. Because in order to make things happen, it takes commitment and effort from 2. It's not one-way road. So imagine I got the buy-in from both of the groups. Then the next thing I do is I activate particular mechanics. So I ask representatives of each group to asynchronously share 3 inputs. 1 is rating their relationship and the collaboration. 2, sharing friction points and tensions. And then the third thing is that I really want to tap into their previous experience and learn maybe they have seen something working in the past, or they have some specific ideas how to improve that collaboration. And I'm a big fan of combination of asynchronous and synchronous collaboration, and I'm not really a big fan of getting people into the meeting straight away whenever you have a problem, right? So moving forward, once I gather these inputs that are received like asynchronously, I make a summary, and only then I bring people to the meeting. So basically, I did a bit of a homework for them so we can have more productive time in the meeting. And the ultimate goal of that improvement session is to share different perspectives and then come up with 1 to 3 specific actions that could get the relationship and the collaboration closer to 10. Important thing to note, closer to 10. Not all relationships need to be perfect. They need to be at a state that is optimal. So you get the mechanics, right? You build your relationship map, you assess the relationship quality, and then you move on with improvement actions. So that was the first thing I want to take for you to take away from the session. How to build your relationship maps and how to actively work on them. But there are also 4 extra things that I want to share with you today that are related to cross-team collaboration. The first thing is the improvement cap. An improvement cap is a situation when 2 teams can improve their collaboration only up until a particular point, and then they hit the ceiling. So imagine there are 2 teams, their relationship initially was 5 out of 10, and due to some improvement actions, they managed to get it to 7 out of 10, but after that, that's it. It's the cap. If you want to improve the relationship further, you might need to hire more people, change the organizational structure, or do any other action. So basically, you need some extra support from leadership. And that's where the leadership roles comes in. So I believe that leaders of the organization should have awareness about this ecosystem and all those relationships, and make sure that there's a high level of effectiveness and quality on those relationships that matter the most. So imagine your whole business is driven by 3 teams that are generating revenue. They're doing a lot of experimentation. So as a business owner or as a leader, you need to make sure that those relationships are very high quality and effective, so your business could deliver more value and make more money. So the role of leadership here is to enable teams to go beyond the cap if needed. And as I mentioned, it might be related to changing the organizational structure, hiring more people, splitting teams, merging teams, or whatever other action. The next thing, and typically is the quite obvious one, it's about sharing and exchanging knowledge. So after running multiple cycles of these improvement sessions and helping teams to work better together, what I've noticed is that the problems and solutions are quite common amongst different organizations and even within the same organization. And what's happening is that sometimes teams are reinventing the wheel. So I'm always encouraging to make all these challenges and improvement actions transparent so teams could learn from each other. And just to give you an example, some time ago, I was facilitating the session, and basically the team just did almost exact same actions as another team like 3 weeks ago. So it's important to make all these learnings transparent so we can accelerate the learning within the organization. And the fourth thing, I believe that in working environments, we should bring a little bit more empathy. And I'm not talking about, holding hands, getting in a circle and singing Kumbaya with the guitar, but basically being more curious and spending some effort to understand others and their perspective. And not a while ago, there was an example where one team was complaining about the other, saying, oh, that team is not responding to us, they're super slow, we're blocked, and so on and so forth. But then after talking to that team, we have learned that that team lost 3 team members in a very short period of time, and they had to hold so many balls in the air at the same time, and all these people were under a significant pressure that was like impossible to help anyone else. So after the first team learned it, they were like, oh, we didn't know that, right? So then it's really all about empathizing with others and dedicating some time before you make your assumptions. So from today, you have all the things you need to start building your relationship maps and building awareness what they are. From next week, I really encourage you to identify those relationships that matter the most. Like, what are the things that could be improved so your team could be more effective, more productive, and deliver more value to the business? And you can start working on it right away, having those conversations with the groups you're collaborating with. And then starting from next month, I believe if you as a business, you want to navigate in this complex world that is always changing, there are new products, innovations, and so on, you need to create this systematic approach when you, within your organization, continuously invest effort in improving those relationships, improving operational excellence. And in that case, you have way better chances to thrive in this world and deliver value to your customers. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Any hands? Or was it like crystal clear?
Is there a situation where having too many relationships is also a challenge? Have you ever encountered one?
Yes, so having too many relationships is a current state, basically a snapshot that shows the reality. what you do about it, it's also like a decision. So the first step is to build the awareness that that situation exists, and then making a call if this is something you want to fix or that's your part of your reality. And I feel it, I know where you're coming from, so in that case, I feel it's leaders' responsibility to make decisions. What do we do in those situations where there are just like too many relationships, too many connections, right? You know, maybe that's splitting the team, or maybe it's just cutting off some relationships and finding more sustainable way how to enable, you know, teams move on their own.
Okay, anybody else? Another hand.
We can do the magic trick. I can tell what's the name of that guy. Can it be Jonas?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paulius. So I do find this extremely useful, and I would like to kind of touch on an example in our organization. So it does seem that this relationship building, you know, is taking some responsibility of project managers. Like in our organization, we have project managers that pretty much manages those relationships, as you mentioned. But we also have product teams who, you know, in your case, we would like to encourage them to manage those relationships themselves. So what happens is that some of these teams, they start to build those relationships, but some of those other relationships are managed by project managers. So there's inconsistency in this case. So how to coordinate that on organizational level and say, guys, we want to enable product teams to do it. You know, we take responsibility from project managers and we want to give it to the teams. How to have that conversation?
Okay, so the first thing I think it should be the guidance from the organization, right? So at the end of the presentation, I was mentioning a systematic approach. So the first thing that should happen is leaders sharing the guidance, like what's our approach in improving cross-team collaboration and this operational efficiency. So after that is done, then we can all connect to that guidance and understand, like, you know, maybe there are some people responsible for improving those relationships. Maybe we say that, okay, starting from Q1, we don't expect product managers to like actively, you know, work on those relationships behind the curtain, and it's solely a team responsibility. So my first suggestion would be to make sure that the leaders provide the right guidance. And then the next thing is to make all those relationships transparent and who's working on them. Thank you. Monsieur?
Yeah, so thank you, Paulius. So I have one question. I know it's already lunchtime, so I'm going to make it short. What was maybe the most surprising thing that you saw happening when introducing relationship mapping with teams or in organizations?
Yeah. So I believe the main thing was building the awareness that I remember we were having this, you know, conversation with, you know, I think it was a designer, engineering manager, product manager, and a decision scientist. And we're like, okay, let's start with mapping out all the relationships. And then people did their individual work, and they were like, oh, I didn't know we work with this team. It's like, oh, I didn't know that we really need some help from this team as well. So for me, the key highlight is the awareness and transparency that those relationships exist and having a shared understanding that, yeah, that's how our landscape look like.